All right, folks, welcome to February 24th Java Operators meeting. I hope everyone is doing well. This is the right one. Yes. Okay, share the agenda. Do we have any new faces that like to introduce themselves? Let me look through the list. Nope. Alrighty.
Andi, nem tudom, miért nekem írt, hogy úgy néz ki, hogy le fog betegedni, és nem tud holnap elmenni szerdára, úgyhogy kéne vele beszélni, hogy mi legyen.
Yeah, maybe mute yourself.
Oh, sorry guys.
I was very confused for a second there.
Yes, I was like, man, is that not the right Adam? He's got a new one introducing himself. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to skip the community interest and come back to them. I went through the issues. Plugins has no new ones. I saw 3 in the Java Operator SDK. I'm not sure if that's something we wanted to talk about in the community interest or wait till we get to the triage or not. But does anyone have anything they would like to share or go over? I think last week, 118 is supposed to go out this week, so that'll be going out and it'll have the new Java Operators plugins in it. And I saw his Christoph's blog, so that's good. Any other things we wanted to bring up?
I mean, we can. I can give an update. What's going on regarding to the progress since last week, if that makes sense.
Sure. Would you like to share your screen for that, or?
Yes, probably that would be the best.
I can click on stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, thanks. So just looking to this. So basically, we continued with the dependent resource MVP scope, and after a long discussion, we settled on the default domain model of how to implement dependent resource, basically base classes for the Kubernetes resources. Maybe Chris can talk more about that if you are interested more in detail, since he was working on that. We had lots of iterations and discussions, and I think the result is provided by Chris is really good and feels really good to use. Then basically, I was working on these 2 issues, which is kind of related, and the PR is there. We are reviewing it now, but it's far from ready. It needs some unit testing and integration testing. Basically, there are 2 things. One is just dependent resources. Its Git resource should always return the fresh resource, and it's complicated in its own how to achieve that in all the cases, but that's even the simpler part. And then there we have this situation when somebody in the reconciliation creates a resource like a config map, and basically I think the general case is that we don't want to trigger reconciliation in this case. If there is an informer, what is basically watching that config maps for change or basically any other resource, Kubernetes resource, this applies, then we don't want to trigger on the create or update that we made ourselves, the reconciliation. And this turned out to be not a trivial problem. When we just try to do update on the cache, at least locally, usually we receive the event first, that then before we able to make the steps to forego the processing of that event. So I prepared the implementation that basically solves this, but it's kind of a complex even falls in an area that I think it's such complexities should be avoided if necessary. So, but probably will stay there. I think it's kind of a borderline stuff, but we'll see how it goes. If there will be some issues with it, I guess we will remove it in the future. We'll see. Yeah, but it and the test and the integration test and everything, it's very stable. It's just hard to understand and hard to reason about if somebody takes a look on the implementation. There are lots of moving parts to make this sure, make this ensure. Basically, that's it from me. I was basically working on this last 3 days, and we'll continue tomorrow and probably also Monday. So that's it. But we are getting there. Hopefully, early mid next week, we are able to release it with the updated samples and docs and everything. It looks very promising and solves lots of problems and makes it quite easy to write operators. Yeah. That's it from me.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go back. So when I looked at these, they all seem tied to that dependent resource work.
Yes.
We talked about this one last time, 942.
Yes. So one thing, maybe I will just, I don't know if it makes sense to go very much in detail. The first issue in this list is a very interesting one. So the question is, what should, I don't know how control runtime does this, but basically if we delete a resource, and it's not deleting custom resource, and then deleting everything that has an owner reference on it, but maybe it's a kind of a edge case that we don't even want to solve. But basically, the situation is we want to delete a resource, for example, a deployment, move it to other namespace, which you cannot change the namespace, for example, or anything, but delete the resource during a reconciliation. And this is something that not really handled now in the design of the dependent resources, that first place. And the other aspect is, what should we do with the events? Like if we mark a deployment for deletion, it could have some other finalizers. We will receive more and more events that will trigger the reconciliation. So this is issue more like discuss that how to kind of dynamically delete resources during a reconciliation period of a life cycle of a custom in a custom resource. So something to think about.
So what triggers? So did someone delete the CR, and now you're going down the path of deleting all of the things that you created because of that? Is that what's triggering this, or something else?
Or something else, like for example, somebody like changes a parameter in a custom resource and says that I want to downscale, or I don't know. It's hard to find a good sample from. Let's say we want to downscale or want to change a number of resources that we want. Like it produces some config maps or something. Let's say config maps. There is a parameter how many config maps. Let's say it's a kind of an unrealistic sample, but
no, that's fine.
And that's we want to. Then we have 3 config maps. We want to just delete 1. And have just 2, and change this parameter to the custom resource, like from 3 to 2, and the next reconciliation we want to delete 1 custom resource, 1 config map from the 3, so we have just 2. So we are not deleting the whole custom resource, but just a dependent resource we are deleting. And basically, we are still will receive the event after we delete it. If it just uses finalizers, then it will we receive event for every finalizer removal. So that will trigger again and again the reconciliation. So it's more like a hypothetical and probably edge case. I don't know how many operators does this, but I guess it's not that unrealistic to delete resources.
No, I mean they do delete resources fairly often. Sometimes so the most common case is you delete a resource because someone deleted the CR, and then the operator detects that and says, "Oh, I need to go delete the dependent resources, the operand, and all that other stuff." In that case, you just delete and let them all go away, and you have to effectively. You will get events, and my understanding is as the events keep coming, you're reconciled just either. Usually you end up doing a get or a something and continue to try to do to delete.
Yes, I mean, this is in Java Operator SDK, this case that you are describing is not a problem.
Okay,
So
but then the next one is the next case for deletion, which I think sounds like what you were saying to me, is if someone makes a change to the CR, whatever, some value, because that's the API, and like you said, scaling. I want to go from 3 to 2. In that case, your operator would delete the resource. I mean, why isn't it the same way? To me, it just seems like it's the same logic. You delete what you need. You delete what you've been told, and if you will have to deal with all the events coming in as they are getting deleted.
Yes, and basically this issue is one side. If this should be optimized to not trigger reconciliation of those events, I'm not sure. To be honest, I don't think.
So in other words, once you get that first one, why keep being noisy and trying to be smart about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
Ready today?
Yeah, I can look at we can look at controller runtime and check that.
Yeah, and the other parties of this issue is how we should define it in the terms of the dependent resources. This is something to a longer debate mainly, because we originally didn't really meant to have this dynamic nature of this. Basically, there is a delete method on the dependence resource abstraction, but it's meant to be on delete when the custom resource is deleted. So it's so maybe just to think about, and we can how to dynamically use dependent resources, but that's just another aspect. Yeah, so
yeah, no, that's a fair issue to have open. That's cool. This other one was about external resources. I'm assuming this is like creating a database off cluster or a resource off cluster.
Yes, or managing a Git repository with customer source or yeah, anything of the cluster. And basically now we are supporting Kubernetes in the dependency resources out of the box Kubernetes objects. But I think one of the major use cases for operators is to manage external resources too. And we already support it with some event sources. And this issue is about to have support also for dependent resources out of the box, some abstract tasks in an abstract way as we do it now for the Kubernetes resources.
Okay. Yeah, external resources are the hardest. Oh, this is up 64. Other dependent resources for a managed dependent resource.
Yeah, so for now it's we have these two modes, the managed dependent resources and the standalone. The standalone, it's just really playing with Java classes and you can pass and wire them up. everything could be solved manually, and then for the managed mode, there is a way to access other resources. So it's if somebody there is a resource I created in reconciliation and want to create other resource, but that needs an input maybe from a status of the other managed resource, and that is basically not really solved elegantly now. So this issue is about to having these dependent resources access each other and use data from the output of one reconciliation of one resource to other. I think it's a fairly common use case. But...
Yeah.
I mean, you can access some resources based on, I mean, via the context, with the context gets secondary resource method, where you just pass the class of the resource you're trying to get, and it will return the one associated with the primary resource.
Yes, I know. I just that's one aspect that we in the release 2.0 we added this functionality, what Chris has just mentioned. I'm not sure that's the way to go. For example, there can be more resources with the same type.
Yeah, but there's a name for that, right?
And then we have a name, but the name is then the name of the informer. I think it will be a little bit more nicer and more structured since we are already solving this as a dependent resource, which is a high-level concept. So then it's accessing each other as a dependent resource through that abstraction is not something that, okay, it's already doable, but it would be a nicer API, I think, to work with.
I mean, I think that's fair. It's a valid issue, so. Yeah, the only other one that I saw was this one that didn't look like it was triaged yet.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't check this yet.
Abstract dependent resource already exists.
Yeah, I took a brief look at it, but to be honest, I didn't have the brain bandwidth to process the issue at the time, so I just left it.
Same here. I will try to take a look tomorrow, probably.
Okay. What was the only other issues there? I think I was going down the path of doing one of my. Okay, so there was an action item for the show labels from SDK. Let's see what that was about. Oh, I think that might have been in terms of. Okay. So on the I think this came up because of one of the issues we were looking at last week in terms of things that we want to keep open, but not necessarily work on immediately. So we have something called important soon and important long term. These two, and basically they're like issues that we think are valid RFEs, but not something we are going to tackle within the next two releases. We will usually mark them as important long term. That way, we don't have to close the issue because it is something that would be nice. Usually, these are sometimes coupled with help wanted. So if folks really wanted to contribute to them, we could do them sooner. But that was the idea there. And then important soon are those issues where the next release can't tackle it, maybe the following one, but it's something we definitely want to do in the more near term. We will mark it important soon. And then we use this label when we do our grooming. We go through and look at the milestones, and then we actually see if there's any important soons that we need to add to an existing release and get that out. And then after, if we keep moving an important soon issue too many times, then we just bump it to a long term, because it's clearly, if it's not important enough to get done, then clearly it just means it's more long term than anything. And that's how we've been able to keep some issues still on the list and be able to find them easier to see if we need to add them. The rest of these, I think that was the only one we really needed, because needs discussion you guys have. Some of these are because of our legacy tied into some of the OpenShift. Oh, and then we have triage labels, which it looks like we have a needs discussion on this side now. So that's what we do, needs information, or we also have a needs discussion. So, but I think we've got a few. Yeah, okay, you got needs discussion now, so that's useful. Yeah, I wish I should have taken the note of why I wanted to show you those, but that is.
Well, that's, I think, useful, especially the priority ones that we are kind of try to manage it in the board kind of priority, but maybe labels are better to have them. It's a high priority, low priority.
Yeah, because like we don't have the board like you do. We have typically what our milestones look like is we have our backlog, which is basically where a lot of the issues will end up. So a lot of the important soon and long term end up in that big backlog, but the labels are how we can find them easier. Then we have our next two releases, and then we have the V2 is, these are things that are breaking changes that require a V2, and we threw them in here. But since your board covers a few things, you can find them differently. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Anything else that you guys wanted to talk about today? Well, I was looking for that infinite loop one. I'll have to make that an action for next week because I forgot. Can't believe it's going to be March already. There we go. Well, if no one has anything, then we'll end this one early. I like what I'm seeing with the dependent resources. That's kind of neat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If no one else has anything, then I will call this one for today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. See you guys.
Take care. Bye.
See y'all.